Spring in Alabama, 1944, when the air was heavy with the perfume of blooming dogwood trees and the soft hum of distant aircraft mingled with the murmurs of a nation at war. Outside, faded war posters beckoned young men to enlist, and the vibrant hues of determination and sacrifice painted every street corner. Yet, tucked away from the chaos of duty and despair, a warm light glowed from an elegant officers' club, where time itself seemed to pause for a brief interlude of hope and beauty. Inside the club, the atmosphere was a delicate blend of elegance and unspoken longing. A jazz band played a series of lively tunes that stirred both the heart and soul, while couples in formal attire moved gracefully beneath the soft glow of chandeliers. The dance floor was alive with laughter and hushed conversations, every moment a small rebellion against the harsh realities of the outside world. It was here that Sarah Williams found herself, an unassuming history teacher with dark, cascading curls carefully pinned back, and a simple pastel dress that accentuated her slender, graceful figure. Though she had not planned to attend, a dear friend's insistence had coaxed her into this unfamiliar realm of glamour and fleeting joy. Sarah's thoughts drifted as she observed the lively scene around her. The clink of glassware, the gentle swish of skirts, and the bittersweet melody of a saxophone evoked memories of quieter times, when dreams were unburdened by the weight of war. Her heart, however, held a quiet reserve of hope even in those somber moments, a spark that would soon be kindled by an unexpected encounter. It was as the band shifted into a slower, more tender tune that Sarah sensed a presence beside her. Turning, she met the gaze of a tall, impeccably dressed officer whose uniform was as crisp as the autumn air. The silver wings emblazoned on his chest caught the light with every subtle movement, glinting like a promise of valor and honor. His eyes, warm yet resolute, conveyed a quiet confidence that spoke of both duty and hidden tenderness. "Would you care to dance?" he asked, his voice smooth and unforced, a gentle invitation that cut through the clamor of the room. For a moment, time seemed to suspend as Sarah hesitated only briefly before allowing her hand to be led onto the dance floor. In that instant, the world beyond the club's walls fell away. Their bodies moved in sync, a silent duet set against the soft strains of the band. The swirling lights and murmurs of fellow patrons blurred into insignificance. All that remained was the intimate space between two hearts daring to dream. As they danced, the officer introduced himself simply as Marcus. "I'm Marcus," he whispered, the sound of his name a quiet yet profound declaration. "Sarah," she replied, her voice barely audible above the soft rhythm of the music. In that small exchange, a word, a glance, a connection was forged that neither of them could have anticipated. Each step, each gentle touch, resonated like the first notes of a timeless melody. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring two souls together, if only for a moment. Sarah's mind raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The dance was more than a simple reprieve from the pressing realities of a country at war. It was an affirmation that life, with all its beauty and sorrow, was worth embracing. The graceful motion of their dance, the fleeting but poignant intimacy of that shared moment, suggested that even in the darkest hours, love might bloom unexpectedly. And so, beneath the warm glow of the club's lights and amid the echoes of soft jazz, an unspoken promise was born. A promise that the night, with its blend of passion and uncertainty, would change both their lives forever. As the song drew to a close, neither Sarah nor Marcus wished to part. In the silence that followed the last note, their eyes spoke volumes, a vow of hope, of dreams yet to be realized, and of a journey that would soon begin. Though the future remained shrouded in mystery, in that single perfect evening, Sarah understood that fate had set her on a path from which there was no turning back. In the days that followed that fateful dance, the connection between Sarah and Marcus deepened into something both fragile and fiercely radiant. Their encounters were clandestine, secret meetings beneath moonlit skies and whispered conversations in hidden corners of the Tuskegee airfield. Marcus, a proud and resolute Tuskegee airman, carried with him the fierce determination to soar beyond the earthly bounds of fear and prejudice. He spoke passionately about the freedom of the skies, the rush of flight, and the unyielding battle he waged not only against the enemy but also against the barriers that society had built. Sarah, whose gentle soul was steeped in a love for history and the promise of tomorrow, listened with rapt attention. Her world, built on lessons of the past and dreams for a brighter future, found in Marcus an embodiment of courage and change. Together, in secret rendezvous by a meandering river and in hushed conversations within the shadowed corridors of the airfield, they wove dreams of a life unburdened by war, a life where love could triumph over adversity. Each meeting was a tapestry of stolen moments, lingering glances, soft laughter, and the shared solace of knowing that even in tumultuous times, tenderness could flourish. In a secluded clearing amid the budding spring blossoms, Marcus would recount tales of daring flight missions and the unspoken bond between comrades in arms. His stories were laced with both valor and vulnerability, each word a testament to his inner battles and his unyielding hope. Sarah, in turn, shared her own dreams, a world where history would be written not by the cruelty of conflict but by the triumph of human spirit and resilience. One golden afternoon, as the soft rays of the sun filtered through a canopy of blossoming branches, Marcus knelt before Sarah in a small grove that seemed to belong solely to them. The gentle murmur of a nearby brook and the rustling of leaves bore silent witness to his earnest declaration. "For as long as it takes," he vowed, his voice trembling with a mix of determination and tenderness. In that sacred moment, the world around them melted into insignificance. With tears glistening in her eyes and a smile that belied her inner strength, Sarah whispered a heartfelt yes, sealing a promise that would define the contours of their lives. Their love was a quiet rebellion, a testament to the fact that even in a time of chaos and uncertainty, hearts could beat in unison with hope. As autumn would one day yield to winter's chill, they promised to remain steadfast, even if the world around them was engulfed in turmoil. Every secret glance, every hushed word exchanged in shadowed corners, was imbued with a quiet defiance of love that dared to flourish in the face of relentless adversity. Yet, amid the promise and the bliss of stolen time, a heavy reality loomed. The relentless march of war was inexorable, threatening to rip asunder the fragile bonds they had so tenderly nurtured. Marcus's duty as an airman would soon call him away to battlefields far from the serene landscapes where their hearts had entwined. Still, in that sacred space beneath the blossoming boughs, the couple vowed to endure whatever trials lay ahead, believing with every fiber of their being that love, true and unwavering, was worth every sacrifice. As the golden hours of that day dwindled into a twilight of hope and promise, Sarah and Marcus clung to the vision of a future where their love could transcend the ravages of conflict, a future that, despite the encroaching shadows, shimmered with the radiant possibility of redemption and reunion. The dawn after their promise broke with an air of bittersweet inevitability. At the break of day, the docks teemed with soldiers preparing to depart for distant battlefields. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of resolve and melancholy, as families and loved ones embraced in desperate farewells. Amid this bustle, Marcus drew Sarah into a final tender embrace, imprinting the memory of her touch into his very soul. "I love you, Sarah," he murmured, his voice thick with unspoken emotion and the weight of a duty that called him away from the solace of her arms. Before she could fully absorb the gravity of the moment, Marcus pressed a small, intricately crafted winged pendant into her palm, a token of his devotion meant to accompany her through the long days of separation. With a final lingering glance that promised both hope and heartache, he vanished into the throng of departing soldiers. In the wake of his departure, Sarah clutched the pendant close, feeling the echo of his presence in every beat of her heart. In the weeks that followed, Marcus's letters became the lifeline that tethered Sarah to a love now suspended between memory and hope. Each carefully penned word painted vivid pictures of soaring European skies, of camaraderie forged in the crucible of battle, and of an unwavering commitment that defied the ravages of war. Sarah's evenings were filled with a gentle rustle of paper and the soft glow of lamplight as she reread his words, finding comfort and strength in every carefully chosen phrase. But as the months turned into an agonizing blur of waiting and longing, the letters, once a steady cascade of hope, gradually ceased. With each passing day of silence, Sarah's heart trembled with uncertainty, yet she refused to succumb to despair. Then, one fateful morning, the doorbell rang with a final shattering note of reality. Standing on her threshold was a uniformed officer, his expression grave as he delivered news that would forever alter the contours of her life. "Mrs. Johnson," he began, his voice devoid of any pretense of comfort, "your husband, Captain Marcus Johnson, has been reported missing in action. His plane went down over France and has not been found." The words hung in the air like a bitter lingering refrain, each syllable a piercing reminder of dreams deferred and a love left suspended in a cruel limbo. In that moment, as the weight of loss and uncertainty bore down upon her, Sarah's world fractured into fragments of memory and pain. Yet, even amid the despair, the ember of hope that Marcus had ignited in her heart refused to be completely extinguished. The winged pendant remained, a silent promise of a love that could never be fully forgotten. With trembling resolve, she vowed that missing did not equal the end, and that somewhere deep within the mists of fate lay the possibility of reunion, even if it was cloaked in uncertainty and time. In the years that followed the heart-wrenching news of Marcus's disappearance, Sarah's life became a quiet testament to the resilience of hope. Each morning, as she gazed out at the sleepy Alabama horizon, she clung to the belief that her beloved was still out there somewhere, lost but not gone. Though the world around her slowly moved on and the scars of war began to fade, her heart remained locked in a timeless vigil, suspended in the bittersweet memories of a love that refused to be diminished by distance or time. Sarah transformed her grief into determination. With an unwavering resolve that belied her gentle exterior, she pored over every scrap of information that might hint at Marcus's fate. She scrutinized lists of returning soldiers, meticulously scanned newspaper photographs, and reached out to veteran organizations in the desperate hope of finding even the faintest sign of his survival. Each small lead, each mention of a lost airman, was pursued with the fervor of a woman who believed that destiny had yet more in store for her. As the decades rolled by, whispers of her devotion began to weave into the local lore. Neighbors and acquaintances spoke softly of the lady who waited, a title both tender and tragic. Despite the insistence of well-meaning friends urging her to let go of the past and embrace the present, Sarah held fast to the promise that had been sealed on that golden afternoon under the blossoming trees. Every letter Marcus had written was preserved like a sacred relic. Every memory was cherished as though it were a tangible piece of the man she loved. Her modest home became a shrine to their shared past, a repository of photographs, handwritten notes, and the winged pendant that still gleamed under the soft light of a bedside lamp. Yet, within this quiet devotion lay a heart that was anything but resigned. In moments of solitude, Sarah would often wander through old fields and along forgotten country roads, speaking softly into the breeze as if addressing Marcus himself. "I haven't given up on you," she would murmur, the sound of her voice mingling with the rustling leaves. It was a dialogue with fate, a daily affirmation that missing did not mean the end, that love, once truly felt, could transcend even the relentless march of time. As the war receded into the annals of history, life resumed its steady cadence for everyone else, but not for Sarah. While others found comfort in the certainty of closure, she remained suspended between hope and despair, ever waiting for the day when the silence of those endless months would finally be broken by the return of a love she had never truly relinquished. In that space between memory and possibility, her soul found both solace and sorrow, a bittersweet testament to a promise that had become her life's unyielding mission. And so, through the long and lonely years, Sarah's quiet rebellion against fate continued. With each passing season, her resolve grew stronger, fueled by the hope that somewhere beyond the reach of mortal time, Marcus was still out there, waiting for the moment when their paths would converge once again. Decades later, when the weight of solitude had settled into the very fabric of her being, a soft chime at the doorbell shattered the long-held silence of Sarah's quiet world. It was early morning, a time when the world was still hushed and the light of dawn had yet to fully warm the day. Answering the door, Sarah was greeted by the familiar gentle face of her nephew, Michael, whose eyes shone with a mixture of cautious excitement and earnest determination. "Aunt Sarah," he said in a measured tone, "I found something you might want to see." His voice carried the gravity of news that had been too long kept hidden. In his hands, he clutched a faded folder containing documents and old photographs. "There's an unidentified American pilot, buried in a small village in France," Michael explained softly. "The military records mention a unique marking on the wreckage, a symbol that matches the description on some of your old letters." For a long moment, Sarah stood in silence, her heart pounding with a tentative hope that defied the passage of years. The possibility that Marcus's final moments might have been preserved in some obscure record sparked a fragile flame of anticipation within her. "It might be him," she whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and longing. Michael gently placed a reassuring hand over hers, his eyes promising that he would not let go of this possibility. "If there's even the slightest chance, I'll find out, Aunt Sarah. I promise you." In that fragile moment, the echoes of the past stirred anew. Sarah's mind raced with memories of whispered promises and secret meetings beneath the canopy of spring blossoms. The letters she had cherished for so many lonely years now pulsed with the possibility of closure, of finally uncovering the truth behind the disappearance that had defined her life. The folder in Michael's hands was not just a collection of documents. It was a lifeline, a tangible connection to a past that she had never fully let go. As the morning light grew steadily stronger, Sarah found herself stepping back into a world she had long believed belonged only to memory. Every detail, the soft creak of old floorboards, the scent of time-worn paper, and the quiet murmur of the wind outside, seemed to whisper that her journey was far from over. The promise of a reunion, however remote it might have once seemed, now gleamed with the clarity of a new dawn. With the folder cradled tenderly in her hands, Sarah realized that this unexpected whisper from the past was not merely a call to remember but an invitation to act, to search for the truth that lay hidden in the depths of time. In the quiet moments that followed, as Michael left to begin his investigations, Sarah sat by the window and allowed herself a single unburdened tear. It was a tear born not solely of sorrow, but of a rekindled hope that transcended decades of waiting. She resolved, in that gentle moment of clarity, that no matter what the coming days might reveal, her heart would remain steadfast, ever faithful to the love that had defined her very existence. 3 weeks after that fateful morning, as winter's chill still lingered in the air, Michael's voice rang clear over the telephone. "Aunt Sarah," he said, a hint of excitement in his tone, "I'm leaving for France. I need you to come with me." His words, simple yet charged with urgency, cut through the quiet resignation that had long settled in her heart. Sarah hesitated, her mind a whirlwind of doubts. "I'm old, Michael. I'm not sure I can travel anymore," she murmured, the fear of the unknown mingling with the bittersweet nostalgia of days gone by. But Michael's response was gentle and insistent. "You're his wife," he reminded her softly. "You've waited 70 years for a sign, for a chance to bring him home. If he's out there, Aunt, it has to be you who finally makes that journey." His voice, imbued with both love and determination, resonated deeply within her. For the first time in decades, Sarah felt the stirrings of a dormant courage, a realization that the time had come to step beyond the confines of a life defined solely by waiting. With trembling resolve and a heart both heavy and hopeful, Sarah agreed. "Yes," she whispered, her voice quivering with the weight of the decision and the promise of a long-awaited reunion. In that single word lay the unspoken courage to reclaim her life, to embark on a journey that transcended the boundaries of time and despair. As she packed a small suitcase with cherished mementos, a few faded photographs, the winged pendant that had become her talisman, and the letters that echoed Marcus's promises, she also packed away years of quiet sorrow and uncertainty. The day of departure arrived amid a flurry of emotions. Standing at the threshold of her modest home, Sarah took one last lingering look at the life she had known, a tapestry woven from threads of loss, hope, and unwavering love. With Michael by her side and the promise of France, and perhaps of long-buried truths, beckoning her forward, she stepped into the unknown. Each step on the path toward the airport was imbued with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, as though every footprint in the dust was a testament to the decades of waiting finally drawing to a close. As the airplane ascended toward the endless blue sky, Sarah's thoughts soared with it, a blend of memories and dreams, regrets and the unyielding hope of reunion. She closed her eyes and for a moment, allowed herself to imagine the possibility that destiny had kept Marcus close all along, hidden in plain sight among the quiet whispers of time. The journey had begun, and with it, the promise that even the longest of waits could be rewarded by the light of rediscovered love. After an arduous journey through the winding roads of the French countryside, Sarah and Michael finally arrived at Saint-Martin-l'Élian, a village so quaint and timeless that it appeared as if it had been preserved in an era far removed from the ravages of war. The village, with its narrow cobblestone streets, weathered stone cottages, and lush, flowering gardens, exuded a quiet dignity. Every building, every corner, seemed to whisper the memory of events long past, inviting visitors to pause and remember. They were greeted at the village entrance by a warm, dignified woman named Beatrice, the mayor of Saint-Martin-l'Élian. Her eyes sparkled with both pride and sorrow as she welcomed them. "Welcome to our home," Beatrice said in a soft but clear voice. "We never knew his name, only his heroism. But we all knew his heart. He could have crashed into the village, but he didn't. He steered his burning plane away, sparing us from a tragedy." Sarah's heart fluttered at those words. The very possibility that Marcus's selfless act had saved an entire community brought tears to her eyes. "It's him," she whispered, barely audible. Beatrice gently took Sarah's hand and led them along a path lined with ancient oak trees, their branches heavy with memory. As they walked, the mayor recounted fragments of local lore, stories passed down from elders who had witnessed the incident. In hushed tones, she described a day when a roaring inferno had threatened the village, only to be diverted by a lone pilot's heroic maneuver. Their path ended at a modest community hall where villagers had gathered for a commemorative display. The walls were adorned with sepia photographs of smiling faces and handwritten notes of gratitude. Amid these relics, a simple yet poignant plaque hung, a tribute to an unnamed pilot whose courage had saved countless lives. The inscription read, "To the pilot whose heart was as boundless as the skies, may his spirit forever guide us." As Sarah gazed at the plaque, memories of her own secret moments with Marcus, of promises shared under the gentle glow of spring blossoms, merged with the collective memory of the village. In that moment, the personal and the communal entwined, and she realized that Marcus's legacy was not merely hers to cherish but belonged to everyone whose lives had been touched by his sacrifice. The villagers, though initially reserved, began to share their own recollections with Sarah and Michael. An elderly woman recalled the day in vivid detail: the sound of the pilot's frantic commands, the roar of the engine, and the miraculous twist of fate that steered the blazing aircraft away from innocent homes. Each testimony was imbued with reverence and gratitude, painting a picture of a man who, even in his final moments, had been guided by a love for humanity. Beatrice's words, tender and heartfelt, resonated deeply with Sarah. "You see," the mayor said, "here in San Martin Leon, we never allowed fear to overshadow hope. We built a monument in honor of that day, not just to remember a tragedy, but to celebrate a hero's last, selfless act. And now, you come bearing his name, his memory, and his love." Standing amidst the echoes of history, Sarah felt the weight of decades lift from her shoulders. The village, with its quiet strength and unyielding hope, affirmed that love and heroism could indeed transcend the darkest of times.
In the gentle rustle of the leaves and the soft murmur of the wind, she sensed Marcus' spirit, ever present, guiding, and protective.
As dusk began to settle over San Martin Leon, Sarah and Michael were invited to a modest gathering in the village square. Under a canopy of twinkling stars and the soft glow of lanterns, villagers shared a meal and stories of the past. Laughter mingled with tears as the community celebrated the life and sacrifice of the pilot whose anonymous deed had saved them all. For Sarah, each shared memory became a bridge connecting her personal longing with a collective history of resilience and gratitude. In that timeless village, Sarah realized that the search for truth was not solely about unearthing facts, it was about healing, about understanding the interconnectedness of lives touched by loss and hope. And as she listened to the villagers' tender remembrances, she vowed to carry forward the legacy of a man who had given everything, even when the world had been shrouded in darkness. The following morning, with the first light of dawn gently illuminating the stone-paved streets of San Martin Leon, Sarah and Michael set out to explore the village further. Their destination was the town square, where, at its center, a modest monument stood, a silent testament to the courage of the unknown pilot. The monument, an elegant bronze plaque mounted on a weathered stone pedestal beneath an ancient oak, was both simple and profoundly moving. No name adorned its surface. Instead, an inscription, etched in careful, deliberate script, read, "To the pilot who saved us, whose final act was a beacon of hope. May his spirit forever soar." Sarah's hand trembled as she traced the inscription with her fingers. Here, in the quiet dignity of this memorial, lay the embodiment of Marcus's ultimate sacrifice. She could almost feel his presence, the warmth of his love echoing through the ages. Michael, standing by her side, noted the subtle details that spoke volumes: the faint scorch marks on the stone, the meticulous care with which local artisans had preserved the memorial, and the deep reverent silence of the onlookers. As they walked through the village, Sarah noticed that every corner seemed imbued with the pilot's legacy. Old photographs of the fateful day were carefully framed in the windows of local homes. In a small museum tucked away in a renovated barn, artifacts from that era, letters, uniforms, even a piece of wreckage, were displayed with dignified honor. Each exhibit told a story of bravery and sacrifice, a narrative that intertwined the pilot's fate with the collective identity of the village. An air of reverence enveloped the museum. Sarah lingered before a display case that held a faded photograph of a young soldier, his eyes alight with determination even in the face of despair. A handwritten note, tucked beside the picture, recounted how the pilot had diverted a catastrophe by his final fateful maneuver. "He is our guardian, our silent savior," the note read. The words, simple yet powerful, resonated deeply within her, merging her personal grief with the village's enduring gratitude. Later that day, as a soft rain began to fall, Sarah found solace in a quiet chapel on the outskirts of the village. The chapel, built decades ago in honor of the unknown hero, was adorned with candles, fresh flowers, and heartfelt prayers. In the hushed sanctity of that sacred space, Sarah knelt and allowed the memories of Marcus to fill her heart. The soft drip of rain against stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the ancient stone floor, provided a meditative rhythm to her thoughts. She recalled every tender word, every shared moment of hope, and felt a renewed connection to the man whose legacy had now become a part of her very being. Outside the chapel, villagers paused in their daily routines to pay their respects, offering silent tributes and murmured prayers. Sarah's presence there was both a personal pilgrimage and a symbol of the unbreakable bond between the pilot and those whose lives he had touched. As she stepped back out into the gentle rain, a profound clarity settled over her. Marcus's story was not one of unending sorrow, but of triumphant love, a legacy defined by selfless sacrifice and the enduring power of hope. The afternoon waned into evening, and as the rain softened to a gentle drizzle, Sarah and Michael joined the villagers in a quiet gathering in the square. Lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the assembled faces, and for a moment, the past and present coalesced in a shared act of remembrance. Sarah listened intently as elders recounted personal anecdotes of that fateful day, tales of a man whose final act was as radiant as the sunrise after the darkest night. Each story, a piece of the intricate mosaic of the village's history, affirmed that even in death, true heroism lived on. In the soft, reflective glow of that evening, Sarah realized that Marcus's legacy was more than just a memory. It was an enduring force that connected hearts across time. His sacrifice had not only saved lives that day, it had sown the seeds of hope in a community that would forever remember him. And now, standing amidst the symbols of his heroism, Sarah felt a quiet certainty that their love, transcending the boundaries of time and loss, would continue to inspire and heal all those who believed in the power of selfless devotion. As the days passed in San Martin de Leon, Sarah and Michael continued their quest for truth, seeking every scrap of evidence that might offer clarity about Marcus's final moments. One crisp morning, while Sarah sat in the village's modest cafe sipping on a steaming cup of coffee, an elderly man approached her table. His eyes, bright despite the lines etched by time, held a mix of caution and compassion. "Excuse me," he began in careful English. "Are you Mrs. Johnson, the wife of the airman?" Sarah's heart pounded as she nodded, unsure of what to expect. The man introduced himself as Henri, a local resident who had lived through that fateful day. He sat down slowly, as if the weight of his memories demanded respect. "I saw him," Henri said, his voice soft but resolute. "I remember that moment vividly. His plane, lit by flames, was coming straight for our village. In those terrifying seconds, I saw him pull up, pulling left, fighting every inch of gravity to steer away from us. He knew what he had to do, even if it meant sacrificing himself." Henry's eyes glistened as he recalled the details, the roaring sound of the engine, the desperate cries of his neighbors, and the miraculous moment when the pilot's courage turned impending doom into salvation. "He saved us all," Henri continued. "But in doing so, he sealed his own fate. I remember the look in his eyes. It was as though he accepted his destiny with quiet dignity, a final act of love for everyone here." Sarah listened in rapt silence. Each word Henri spoke painted a vivid picture of the man she had loved, a man whose bravery transcended the ordinary, whose final moments were a testament to a life defined by honor and sacrifice. "I always believed he was more than just a hero to us," Henri added, his voice trembling with emotion. "He was a guardian, a protector whose sacrifice still echoes in every corner of this village." Moved by Henry's heartfelt testimony, Sarah felt a bittersweet mix of sorrow and pride. The details he recounted, his description of Marcus's determined expression, the fierce light in his eyes, and the palpable tension of that day, added layers to the narrative she had clung to for decades. It was as if, through Henry's recollections, she was finally glimpsing the full measure of the man she had once known so intimately. Henri also mentioned small tokens that remained from that day, a charred piece of metal embedded in a wall, a scorched fragment of the pilot's uniform carefully preserved by a local family, and even a smudged sketch that a young witness had drawn in haste. "These remnants," Henri explained, "are not just physical traces, they are echoes of a moment when one man's courage rewrote the fate of many." As their conversation drew to a close, Henri squeezed Sarah's hand gently. "Your husband's final act was not in vain. It saved lives, it inspired hope. I have seen many years pass, but I will never forget his sacrifice." His words, laden with both reverence and personal loss, resonated deeply with Sarah. In that moment, she felt a connection that transcended time, a bond forged by shared remembrance and the unyielding truth of heroism. Walking away from the cafe, Sarah's mind swirled with the vivid images Henri had shared. Every detail served to remind her that the love she had held onto for so long was built on a foundation of valor and selflessness. With renewed determination, she resolved to uncover every fragment of Marcus's story, to piece together the mosaic of memories that affirmed his ultimate sacrifice. And in doing so, she hoped to find not only the closure she so desperately needed, but also the enduring comfort that comes from knowing a love, true and unyielding, never truly dies. Later that week, after days filled with interviews, archival visits, and hushed conversations with villagers, Michael invited Sarah to a quiet corner of a local municipal office. There, amid stacks of yellowed documents and military records, He slowly unfurled a worn folder. "Aunt Sarah," he began, his voice steady yet filled with anticipation, "I found something crucial." Inside the folder were detailed reports and letters from the U.S. Air Force archives. Michael carefully pointed to a typed dispatch that confirmed what Sarah had long hoped but had dared not fully believe. Captain Marcus Johnson, the document read, was on an escort mission when his plane sustained critical damage. Despite orders to retreat, he chose to stay behind and divert enemy fire from the bombers. His final transmission, though garbled, clearly indicates a deliberate act of self-sacrifice. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she read the confirmation of Marcus's ultimate act of courage. Here, at long last, was the definitive proof of his heroism, a record that elevated his personal sacrifice to the level of legendary valor. "He stayed behind so that others could live," Michael said softly, his hand resting gently on hers. His choice was not one of despair, but of an unfathomable love for his comrades, for his country, and ultimately for you. In that quiet office, surrounded by the tangible echoes of history, the truth unfolded like a balm over old wounds. The archival documents revealed details that had been shrouded in uncertainty for decades. They described how, during the fierce aerial combat over France, Marcus had maneuvered his stricken aircraft in a way that defied the odds. His actions had drawn enemy fire away from a formation of bombers, ensuring that many lives were spared, even as he paid the ultimate price. The gravity of the revelation was overwhelming. Sarah could now see, with unclouded clarity, the full measure of Marcus's sacrifice. Every letter she had cherished, every memory that had sustained her through the long years of waiting, was now imbued with a profound, unassailable truth. He had chosen to face the enemy head-on, to become a beacon of hope amid the chaos of war, a final selfless act that would forever define his legacy. As Michael gently closed the folder, the silence between them was filled with a mixture of sorrow and awe. Sarah's voice, trembling with emotion, broke the stillness. "He chose them, even as he chose me," she whispered, the words carrying both the pain of loss and the pride of love. In that moment, the decades of uncertainty were replaced by a definitive narrative, a story of valor that transcended personal tragedy and became a symbol of hope for an entire generation. Outside the municipal office, the fading afternoon light cast long shadows over the cobblestones, as if nature itself was bowing to the truth revealed within those documents. Sarah and Michael stepped out together, each carrying a renewed sense of purpose. With the verified account of Marcus's final mission, Sarah felt an overwhelming need to honor his memory, not only as a husband who had left her too soon, but as a hero whose sacrifice had altered the course of many lives. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah found herself alone with the U.S. Air Force letter in her hands. The words, now etched into her heart, solidified the legacy of a man who had chosen the path of selfless courage. And with that truth firmly established, Sarah prepared herself for the final steps of a journey that had spanned decades, a journey toward both reconciliation and a final farewell. Under the cool glow of a full moon, San Martin gathered for its annual candlelit vigil, a time-honored tradition that had persisted for 70 long years. This year, however, the vigil carried an extra weight. For the first time, Sarah stood at the forefront of the gathering. The entire village had come together in a circle around the modest monument, their faces lit by flickering candlelight and the quiet intensity of remembrance. The mayor, Beatrice, addressed the assembled crowd in a soft, measured tone. "Tonight, we honor not only the memory of our fallen hero, but also the enduring spirit of love and sacrifice that he embodies. His story reminds us that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, a single act of courage can ignite hope in us all." Her words echoed through the still night, blending with the murmurs of heartfelt prayers and the rustle of the gentle autumn breeze.
Taking ade Brit, Sarah steppet forward.
With her voice steady yet trembling with emotion, she spoke, "My beloved Marcus was more than just a hero to me. He was the man who taught me that love can defy the cruelty of fate, that sacrifice can forge legacies that outlast time itself. I stand here, not in sorrow alone, but in gratitude for the love we shared, a love that endures even as he has gone from this world." Her words, resonant and true, reached deep into the hearts of all present. In that sacred circle of candlelight, the villagers listened intently as Sarah recounted intimate memories of their life together, the stolen moments beneath blossoming trees, the whispered promises that had sustained her through years of waiting, and the unwavering hope that had defined their love. "You are home, my love," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the humble monument that bore silent witness to his final act of bravery. "And so am I, forever bound to you by the memories we created and the sacrifices you made." A hushed silence fell over the crowd as Sarah paused. The vigil, which had always been a communal moment of remembrance, now felt deeply personal, a final goodbye to the man whose love had shaped her entire existence. Her words resonated in the cool night air, mingling with the soft flicker of candles and the whispered prayers of those who had come to bid farewell to a hero. Then, in a final act of symbolic closure, Sarah knelt before the monument and gently placed the winged pendant, Marcus's cherished token of love, at its base. The gesture was both an offering and a farewell, a testament to a bond that would remain unbroken despite the inexorable march of time. In that poignant moment, as the village's collective grief transformed into a celebration of courage and remembrance, Sarah allowed herself to feel the full spectrum of emotions: sorrow, love, gratitude, and above all, a deep sense of peace. As the vigil drew to a close, the villagers dispersed quietly into the night, carrying with them the memory of a hero and the hope that his sacrifice would never be forgotten. Standing beneath the vast expanse of the starlit sky, Sarah felt a gentle warmth spread through her, a silent reassurance that Marcus's spirit, though departed, would forever be with her, guiding her toward a future defined by love and resilience. With the first blush of dawn on a clear, crisp morning, Sarah made her way to a quiet corner of the village cemetery. In a small, sunlit clearing, a modest headstone now bore Marcus's name, a permanent testament to his sacrifice and his enduring legacy. The gentle rays of the morning sun bathed the grave in a soft, golden light, as if nature itself was paying homage to a hero whose life had been defined by love and valor. Sarah stood before the headstone, her heart swelling with a mixture of sorrow and profound relief. In that silent moment, every long year of waiting, every tear shed in solitude, converged into one final, healing embrace. "Fly high, my love," she murmured softly, her voice carrying the weight of decades filled with both longing and hope. In her mind's eye, she saw Marcus smiling, the same gentle smile that had first captivated her on that fateful night in Alabama, and she felt with unyielding certainty that he was there watching over her. As she lingered by his resting place, memories of their time together danced through her thoughts. The stolen glances, the quiet conversations beneath the stars, and the tender promises exchanged in moments of both joy and despair. Each recollection was a testament to a love that had defied the ravages of war and the passage of time. In the soft rustle of the wind and the gentle murmur of the trees, Sarah sensed his presence, a comforting whisper that reassured her that true love never truly dies. The villagers, too, gathered one last time near the headstone, offering silent prayers and soft words of farewell. Together, they formed a circle of support around Sarah, their shared remembrance of Marcus weaving a tapestry of unity and hope. In that collective moment of goodbye, the boundaries between past and present blurred, and the village itself seemed to breathe with a renewed sense of purpose. As the morning unfolded, Sarah slowly turned away from the grave, her eyes lifted to the expansive sky overhead. The heavens, clear and boundless, symbolized the infinite journey of the spirit, a journey that Marcus had embarked upon with courage and grace. With a gentle smile, she felt the quiet assurance that, although their physical lives had taken separate paths, their souls were forever intertwined. In that transcendent moment, she finally understood that coming home was not simply about closing a chapter of grief, but about embracing the eternal bond of love and sacrifice. Walking away from the cemetery, Sarah carried with her the light of a new beginning, a resolve to live each day in honor of Marcus's memory and the unbreakable connection they had shared. The road ahead was uncertain, but the legacy of his heroism and the power of their love would always guide her steps. And as the morning sun rose higher, casting its radiant glow across the village, Sarah whispered one final heartfelt goodbye, a promise that his spirit would forever soar above, watching, guiding, and inspiring her to live a life rich with meaning, courage, and the enduring warmth of true love.
In the quiet after the storm of memories and revelations, Sarah stood as a living testament to the power of love, sacrifice, and unyielding hope.
Over the decades, the weight of loss had once pressed her into a solitary vigil, each day a silent prayer for a reunion that seemed destined never to come. Yet through every letter faded by time, every whispered recollection shared in the gentle twilight of San Martin Lilian, she found that love's true light was never extinguished, it simply transformed. Marcus's final act of valor, recorded in both the hearts of those he saved and the official annals of history, had not only carved his name into the legacy of heroism but had also bridged the gap between the past and the present. His sacrifice became a guiding beacon for Sarah, illuminating her path even when the future appeared shrouded in uncertainty. In the gentle embrace of that small village, where every stone and every whispered legend bore witness to his bravery, Sarah discovered that the truth was more profound than the mere absence of loss. It was the presence of memory, a living, breathing spirit that bound her to Marcus, transcending time and even death. Her journey, fraught with grief and steeped in longing, had finally led to a moment of catharsis. Standing before Marcus's headstone in the soft glow of dawn, Sarah felt not the sting of sorrow, but a tender warmth that spoke of enduring connection. In that moment, she understood that true closure was not about severing ties with the past. It was about weaving those memories into a new tapestry of life, one that celebrated both the joy of their shared love and the bittersweet beauty of sacrifice. The village, with its resilient heart and the collective memory of a hero who had given everything, had embraced Sarah as one of its own. Their shared remembrances, the quiet vigil, and the gentle words of comfort formed a chorus of unity, a living reminder that even the deepest wounds could heal when nurtured by community and compassion. In that unity, Sarah found the courage to step forward into a life enriched by the legacy of Marcus, one where every sunrise held the promise of new beginnings. As the years continued to unfold, Sarah carried the flame of their love with quiet dignity. Her life, marked by a long vigil of waiting, had transformed into a journey of remembrance and renewal. She learned that while some chapters must come to a close, the echoes of love never truly fade. They persist in the hearts of those who dare to remember, to honor, and to live fully despite the shadows of loss. In the final analysis, Sarah's story is not solely one of heartbreak or despair, but a luminous celebration of the human spirit. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, love has the power to inspire acts of bravery, to kindle hope, and to light the way home. And as she gazed upward at the endless sky, a sky that once carried Marcus's brave flight, Sarah smiled, knowing that true love, like the stars above, would forever guide her path. In that enduring light, both she and Marcus remained united, their souls intertwined beyond the confines of time, forever echoing the eternal promise of love that defies even the finality of farewell.
Thank you for watching until the end.
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you. And if this story touched your heart, share it with your friends. See you in the next video.